Let's look at inequalities. Again, I hope you have these notes in front of you, and if you don't, you are writing everything down. We should first introduce the symbols we are going to use. This one with the small end, the point going to the left, is known as the less than symbol. We know that 4 is less than 5. When we turn this in the other direction with the point going to the right, we call this the greater than symbol. 5 is greater than 4. If we add a line underneath it, it means less than or equals. 4 is less than or equal to 5. Again, the line underneath, greater than or equal. 5 is greater than or equal to 4. So we're going to use those symbols when we're working with inequalities. We want to be able to put an inequality on a number line. We're going to use open or round parentheses if we're talking about greater than or less than. X is less than 3. So for example, if I put my 3 here, I know that we're not including 3, so I'm going to use an open bracket. X is less than 3. And we shade to the left because those numbers are smaller or less than 3. If I said that X is greater than 5 on my number line again, if I put my 5 here, I'm going to use a round bracket or maybe an open circle. Let's just change that. It depends on the textbook you're using. This time I'm shading to the right to show that the numbers are greater than 5, larger than 5. If we say that X is less than or equal to 3, we're going to use square or closed brackets. So again, let's draw our number line and put 3 on it. We're shading to the left because X is still possibly less than 3. Put our arrow going to the left. But this time we're going to use square brackets to say we're including 3. That's what this equals means. We could use a closed circle. If we say X is greater than or equal to 5, we're going to use a closed circle, but still shade to the right to represent those numbers greater than 5. The closed circle tells me I'm including 5. So, square bracket, because it's equal to, closed circle, because it's equal to. When there's not an equal, we're using a round bracket or an open circle. You may need to listen to that a couple of times for it to sink in and for you to understand. Let's do some practice. Pause your video and see if you can graph these inequalities on a number line. X is greater than 7. I'm going to shade to the right where the numbers are greater. It's not equal, so I'm going to use a round bracket. Less than or equal to 2/3. Less than, I'm shading to the left. Less than or equals, I need a square bracket. The next one's tricky. We like inequalities when X is on the left and our value is on the right. But what happens when I change this around? I actually have to switch the sign as well. So be careful about that. Because the small side of the sign is pointing at X, I have to keep the small side of the sign pointing at X. This tells me that X is less than -5. And I should use a round or open parentheses. Notice that when X is on the left, I can shade in the direction the arrow is pointing. That's a useful trick. So when X was pointing to the right, we shaded to the right. When X is pointing to the left, we shaded to the left. We don't only use an inequality notation, we also use interval notation. And you're going to find in Math 103, we use interval notation all of the time. So it's a good idea to learn that now in Math 99. We use interval notation to describe an inequality without using a number line or an inequality symbol. So what do we do? Well, first of all, we use the endpoints of the inequality in the order they appear. This is important. We're using the endpoints in order. We're going to use closed or square brackets if we have greater than or equals, less than or equals. We're going to use round or open parentheses when the endpoint is just greater than or less than. So if we see the greater than or equals, the less than or equals, we're going to use the square brackets. If we see greater than or less than, we're going to use round brackets. Let's look at some examples. X is less than or equal to -1. I always find it easiest to put it on the number line first. So here's, oh, I forgot that this likes to disappear. Just one moment, please. Okay, let's continue here. So we have X is less than or equal to -1. We can put -1 on our number line. The arrow tells us to shade to the left. X is less than or equal. Less than or equal means we're going to use a square or closed bracket. And think about where we're heading. -1, -2, -3, all the way to -infinity. We said for interval notation, we have to use the endpoints in the order they appear. So we're going to write -infinity, -1. We already see that -1 has a square bracket. Infinity is always round. Let's try the next question. X is less than 3. So we know we're shading to the left, less than 3, heading to -infinity. This time we're going to use a round or open bracket. So for interval notation, again, we're using the endpoints in the order they appear. negative infinity, comma, 3. We already know we have a round bracket on 3, and infinity is also always round. Can you pause your video and try the next one? X is greater than 5, so we're shading to the right towards positive infinity. Not equals, so we're using a round bracket, an open bracket, really called a parentheses, but I always say bracket for some reason. We're using the endpoints in order. 5, comma, infinity. Infinity is always round. 5, also this time. Pause your video, try the next one. Greater than or equal to negative 8. We need to use a closed bracket or square. For interval notation, the endpoints in order. Infinity is always round. Negative 8, square or closed this time. The next two are a little bit tricky because X is on the right. I would suggest rewriting these inequalities with X on the left. Do you remember what we said? When we changed X to the other side, we had to change the direction of the sign. Now I can see that X is greater than 2/5. So I'm going to shade to the right towards positive infinity and open bracket. For interval notation, we're using the endpoints in order. Infinity is always round, and for this question, so is 2/5. Pause your video, try the last one. We put X on the left, so we can see that we're shading towards negative infinity. We have X is greater, or sorry, less than or equals, so that means we need a square or closed bracket. For interval notation, you're going to write those endpoints in the order they appear. Infinity is always round, and in this case, 0 is square or closed. Do some practice with writing inequalities on the number line and then writing it in interval notation before you listen to the next video lesson.